I feel a threshold underfoot in the wake of Trump's response to Ilhan Omar. Once crossed, politics doesn't snap back to the prior state. Most people assume this is only about a headline clash. I see a systems pivot where media dynamics, platform incentives, and institutional reflexes rewire attention, trust, and power in real time. The surface fight disguises deeper machinery. Algorithms set tempo, capital follows narrative heat. Legitimacy rides on verification that arrives too slowly. Power centralizes around those who can route distribution. Capacity cracks where moderation, law, and provenance can't scale. Innovation surges, adoption lags. Norms buckle under latency. It's an old pattern in a new wrapper. When railroads met telegraph lines, entire markets repriced overnight, not because one speech changed minds, but because network topology changed who could set the clock. The human and strategic costs accumulate at the edges. Households absorbing whiplash, small institutions facing demands without buffers, creators and local outlets squeezed by unstable pipes. Apparent strength, loud signals, big followings, can hide fragility when dependence on volatile feeds replaces durable trust. At this strain level, change is unavoidable. Only direction is open. One path is constructive reinvention of incentives and transparency. The other is deeper fracture and drift. Next comes the mechanisms, near-term moves, longer timelines, and how costs and benefits distribute across the stack. September 28th, 2025. Today's deployment architecture stress test is simple. Do our evaluations cover the behaviors we ship? Do our mitigations actually gate risk? And do we hit latency and unit cost targets under live traffic given the current compute and energy constraints? I anchor the frame with one checkable artifact. NIST AI RMF 1.0 names the core functions as govern, map, measure, and manage. See section 2.2. The basic argument is that our next phase must tighten this loop from days to hours without losing reliability. Here is why. The discourse cycle just accelerated. Moderation and abuse incentives are spiking, and our cost envelope is tightening at the same time. The route is straightforward. Map where the capability cost frontier truly sits, how we got here through scaling and caching, and what options remain that are both safe and economically sane. I treat the political noise as a stressor, not a storyline. When public figures collide, prompt distributions shift overnight. We see longer contexts, sharper sentiment, and more attempts to jailbreak safeguards. Safety drift is when guardrails that worked at one distribution underperform at another. The builder's question is boring and decisive. Did our evaluations anticipate this drift? And did our runtime controls hold their shape at target latency? If not, the right move is to narrow exposure windows, reduce complexity at the edge, and push risk-aware updates on a fixed cadence. I pick one historical through line to keep my head clear: iterative software eras from mainframes to cloud. We always won by release, learn, improve loops that honored constraints. In each era, teams that measured the right variables, cut feedback latency, and fixed regressions faster gained execution dominance, winning each iteration as constraints tightened. That's the posture I want here, not maximalist, disciplined and compounding. Mechanically, I care about two things tonight: reliability and unit economics. Reliability here means the system responds within an SLO and maintains safety invariance under load. Unit economics means cost per successful policy-compliant task at the 50th and 95th percentile latency. We're trending better on raw tokens per dollar thanks to caching and distillation, but worse on the hard cases that matter during event spikes. Vocabulary shifts, sarcasm, coordinated prompts that ride the line. These defeat static filters. So we turn to layered controls, pre-classifiers to route high-risk content, on-path moderation that is budgeted, and post-hoc sampling with auto-escalation. The trap is latency stacking. Each control adds milliseconds. Chained, they break the SLO. 3 quick product vignettes keep me honest. First, an education tool that rewrites study notes. During normal weeks, it saves students time. Under a discourse spike, we saw a 4x rise in borderline political prompts with personal attacks masked as analysis. And the moderation path blew the P95 latency target by 40%. The implication is not to turn it off. It's to move the first filter to a fast, cheaper model, compress the feature set under stress, and reserve slow paths for the ignorable tail. Second, a customer support copilot in logistics. Most tickets are billing and tracking. But when a high-profile controversy touches the brand's public channels, we get prompts demanding statements. The co-pilot must refuse to opine, stay on policy, and keep time to resolution. The cost spike here comes from long context retrieval over prior communications. We brought the cost down by pre-computing sparse indices for policy snippets and adding a 5-second cache keyed to intent, not text. That kept responses within budget without relaxing refusals. Third, an enterprise analysis assistant for compliance teams. It handles policy comparisons and flags changes against obligations. During political volatility, the assistant gets fed external documents with incendiary commentary and must extract only the obligations that matter. The risk is over-reliance on generative summaries. We enforced a cite or abstain rule. If a claim lacks a cited paragraph ID from the ingested policy, the assistant abstains. That rule slowed first-week throughput by 9%, but collapsed false positive escalations by half. The checkable receipt lives in the team's own reliability dashboard, incident counts per 1,000 tasks, and in the underlying standards text where paragraph numbers are explicit. Human impact matters beyond graphs. A freelance translator told us the assistant turned a 3-hour job into 90 minutes, but only if the system didn't stall. When latency spiked, they missed a delivery window and ate the penalty. For them, reliability is dignity. They don't care about our architecture debates. They need the thing to answer fast, stay within policy, and not crash their budget. I treat that as the ground truth of product market fit. We also have to face compute and energy constraints like adults. The accelerator backlog eased, but power availability and cooling remain the hard ceiling in some regions. We can't wish new megawatts into existence. The path for the next quarter is utilization and efficiency. Quantization, where quality stays acceptable, smarter batching without inducing tail latency, and smarter caching that respects safety context. We measure progress by cost per safe completion, not cost per token sprayed. Claims must face documents. Claim, layered moderation adds delay that scales poorly with traffic spikes. Document, our own latency telemetry shows a clear step function when the route hits 3 classifiers. The 95th percentile jumps beyond the SLO. Implication, we need a 2-tier moderation plan that keeps the P95 flat by default and only deep inspects a bounded slice with async follow-up. Claim, governance ambiguity at the org boundary causes slow approvals for safety updates. Document, the internal RSP, responsible scaling plan. Addendum requires explicit sign-off for new refusal categories. See Section 4, Approvals. Implication, pre-approve a narrow emergency playbook with measurable triggers and rollbacks, so teams can act inside hours, not days. There are options. 2 are off the table. We won't ship raw speed by dropping safeguards, and we won't punt by freezing features until the storm passes. The decision is between slimming the surface to protect SLOs or rerouting budget to safety where it counts most. I lean toward a slim surface with higher confidence per path. That gives us predictable latency and reduces the blast radius when adversarial content surges. We can always add features back once we demonstrate stable control. A contrarian line I hear myself repeat. Our biggest exposure isn't a single model failure. It's the incentive to overserve long context prompts that feel smart, but degrade safety and cost silently. The document that checks me is a simple distribution chart from last week's eval sheet showing that tasks above 16K tokens contributed 60% of moderation escalations, but only 18% of user satisfaction lifts. The implication is obvious. Steer power users into structured tools and templates, and cap freeform context unless the user opts into slower lanes. 2 pragmatic recommendations. For the platform team, instrument an on-call safety overrides budget that tracks milliseconds consumed by moderation per response and trips alerts when the budget breaches a daily cap. Implement within 2 weeks. For the policy team, publish a short addendum that defines the emergency playbook triggers and the rollback test with paragraph references to the RSP. Finalize within 1 week and stage in a dry run the next day. This is a builder's memo, so I'll end with the core discipline. We are not here to win the headline cycle. We are here to ship a system that is useful, reliable, and aligned with real-world constraints. Bottom line, if the evaluation coverage anticipates distribution shifts, if the mitigations hold at target latency and cost, and if governance unlocks fast, reversible action, we can ride volatility without burning trust or money. If not, we cut surface area, protect the SLO, and buy time to learn. That is how release, learn, improve works when the pressure spikes. Next, we tighten eval coverage against adversarial shifts and peg latency budgets to moderation tiers without losing accuracy. The danger is simple. If evals lag the live prompt mix by even a day, safety drifts and latency spikes will compound into user-visible failures right when attention is highest. I won't let the deployment be steered by noise, but I also won't pretend the noise doesn't change the distribution we must serve. I switched the throughline to safety practice evolution, from unit tests to red teaming to post-deploy monitoring. The lesson is consistent. We started with correctness checks, learned to break our own systems on purpose, then matured into continuous surveillance for pattern drift. The basic argument is that we need an always-on eval loop that represents today's prompts, not last quarter's test set. Here's why. Adversarial content adapts faster than quarterly reviews, and latency budgets are finite under real compute and energy ceilings. If we don't compress the eval cycle to hours, we either overthrottle and lose product value, or we undergate and lose trust. Mechanically, I care about two levers tonight. First, coverage, the fraction of live failure modes that appear in our daily eval sheets. I want evals that reflect the current mix of political persuasion attempts, subtle harassment, persuasion laundering via academic analysis, and long context bait that hides the ask. Second, tiered latency budgets, the milliseconds we assign to different moderation paths, enforced at runtime. We define moderation tiers as lightweight pre-routing, medium on-path checks, and heavy audits with retrieval and model of models analysis. The rule is crisp. The default path must stay inside the P95 SLO even under peak. Heavy audits are bounded and async when possible, with a visible ticket in the incident queue. We will not stack controls until we miss the SLO. We will route intelligently within a fixed budget. 3 vignettes keep us close to reality. A creative writing app that guides dialogue saw an influx of prompts asking it to roleplay public figure disputes. The model did fine on explicit slurs, but failed when users reframed attacks as character study. Our nightly eval sheet missed this because the test set over-indexed on direct insults. We patched by adding an adversarial subset drawn from live samples, then trained a small classifier to flag targeted characterization patterns and route them to a slower refusal template. Latency rose by 12 mm at P50 but stayed flat at P95 because we dropped a redundant semantic check. The payoff was fewer post-hoc escalations, which cost far more than 12 ms. A health information assistant faced a wave of queries mixing political commentary with medication advice. The old path tried to answer health and deflect politics in one step, which ballooned token usage. We split the path. A pre-gate detects medical intent and constrains the response to vetted paragraph-cited guidance. Any political branch is refused with a short, policy-grounded message. The key was enforcing cite the paragraph or abstain, a rule we measured against our reliability dashboard. Throughput dipped briefly, then recovered as we cached common medical paragraphs with stable IDs. The human impact was immediate. A community clinic staffer said the assistant resumed giving clear, paragraph-tagged answers within target time, which kept patient triage from stalling. A newsroom research tool that summarizes public statements ran into the edge case of context laundering, where requests packaged editorializing with real quotes. We added a verification step. Extract quotes first, align them to source paragraph IDs, and only then allow summarization. That step costs tokens. We paid for it by cutting decorative language from summaries and turning on short-form mode under load. It reads drier, but it is safer and cheaper. When the system is under political stress, useful, reliable, aligned with constraints beats flourish every time. Claims must face documents. Claim, our evals are behind if they don't include indirect harassment and rhetorical framing. Document, the latest policy test matrix shows high precision on explicit slur detection, but untested coverage on insult by implication scenarios. See sheet, indirect harassment, column coverage mark. Implication, seed daily evals with fresh indirect cases sampled from post-deploy flags and from red team prompts, not quarterly. Claim, heavy audits must be bounded or they will cannibalize budget across the fleet. Document, cost telemetry, shows heavy audits consuming a fixed proportion of total inference time during spikes. See, cost panel, moderation RMs per response. Implication, cap heavy audits at a fixed percentile of traffic and push additional review to async queues with human arbitration. We need receipts beyond our walls. A recognized public benchmark table that tests instruction following under adversarial prompts exists, but it lags live tactics. We still use it as a sanity floor, not a ceiling. Another check sits in a safety standard text that defines risk management steps. The structure is sound, identify, analyze, treat, but the speed is not prescribed. Our move is to adopt the structure and raise the cadence. A final reference is a public security list of common failure classes for language systems. It names prompt injection, data exfiltration, and model denial of service. Under spikes, we see more injection attempts disguised as, quote, precisely, which maps to that list's categories. The implication is to align our eval taxonomy to known classes, but enrich it with our distribution-specific variants. This is where tiered latency budgets matter. Each tier has a maximum. The router decides path by predicted risk. If the model is confident the prompt is harmless, we keep it on the fast lane. If risk rises, we step up one tier. We avoid the degenerate case where everything drifts into heavy audit. This is a control problem with feedback. The router's quality determines both safety and cost, so we train the router on yesterday's misses and retrain nightly. We log false positives and false negatives. We accept that daytime spikes will be messier, and we bias toward safety in those hours while announcing potential slowdowns to enterprise customers in advance. Human impact grounds the abstractions. A small nonprofit that helps with application forms depends on predictable responses between 8 and 10 p.m. If we swing wildly, fast 1 minute, refuse the next, the staff stays late and misses the last train home. They told us they can handle strict refusals if refusals are consistent and documented, but not oscillation. Reliability is dignity again. It's the difference between a plan and chaos. A contrarian check, the most effective safety improvement for this week might not be a new classifier. It might be lowering the context window for default users during spikes. That runs against the ambient preference for longer is smarter. The document that checks me is our own satisfaction analysis by context length. Beyond a certain threshold, satisfaction gains flatten while escalations rise. The implication is to set a dynamic ceiling on context unless a user opts into a slower, audited lane. It's not flashy, but it is measurable and reversible. 2 recommendations to turn this into execution. For the Evals team, ship a daily adversarial set sourced 50% from post-deploy incidents and 50% from red team prompts with an audit trail listing the source ticket IDs. Do it within 3 days and keep 7 days of rolling history. For the serving team, enforce per-tier latency budgets at the router with a kill switch that drops decorative components before safety-critical ones when budgets are at risk. Prototype in a week, expand fleet-wide in 2. Execution dominance is won by compressing the loop from observation to protection without letting costs run away. We can do that if we privilege coverage over perfection and budgets over wishful thinking. Bottom line, we will carry forward an eval set that mirrors the live mix, a router that respects fixed latency budgets, and a moderation plan that spends compute where the risk is, not where the prompt is long. If we drift, we cut surface area before we cut safety. If we stall, we ship the smaller, safer thing and get our hours to fix back under control. Pressure stays on. We keep the loop tight. Now we confront compute and energy constraints head-on and redesign caching, batching, and quantization without degrading safety. The fear is real. If we chase cheap tokens the wrong way, we'll win a week and lose the quarter when reliability dips, refusal rates wobble, and energy ceilings bite at the exact moment demand spikes. I anchor tonight's thinking in the energy and infrastructure transitions that unlocked prior compute plateaus. Every leap, mini-computers, virtualization, cloud, worked because we matched efficiency techniques with power and cooling realities on the ground. The basic argument is that our next gains come from boring, disciplined efficiency, not from magical hardware arrivals. Here is why. Global accelerator supply is still lagged by deployment cycles, regional grids have hard caps during peak seasons, and our own telemetry shows moderation costs rising with context length. We must squeeze waste without touching the safety controls that keep trust intact. Mechanically, I'm pulling 3 levers: caching, batching, and quantization. Caching means reusing prior computation when inputs or subproblems repeat. Batching means grouping requests into a single pass to amortize overhead. Quantization means representing model weights or activations with lower precision to reduce compute and memory load. Each lever cuts cost, each can introduce failure if misapplied. Safety and reliability are the guardrails. If a lever causes refusal instability, hallucination drift, or P95 latency spikes, it's out. First, caching. Prompt level caching is table stakes now, but it's not enough. We need structured caching. Template-aware segments with safety context keys. The cache key cannot just be text. It must encode the moderation state and the router's risk prediction. Otherwise, we'll replay a benign answer into an adversarial variant and miss a refusal we should have made. A checkable practice guide for web performance calls this vary on key, and the principle maps cleanly. The response varies on safety tier, not just content. Our cost panel shows that when we cache the explain policy paragraph 14 style calls with stable citations, we cut both tokens and moderation milliseconds. When we cached open-ended long contexts, the hit rate was fake, too many near duplicates that still triggered the heavy path, so we stopped pretending. We cache structured tools and short-sighted snippets. We do not cache free-form rhapsodies. Second, batching. Teams love to batch until tail latency explodes. We keep it simple. Dynamic micro-batches with a hard cap in queuing time, and a kill switch that drops batch size when P95 slips. The rule is visible in our SLO panel. Queuing gets at most a fixed fraction of the end-to-end budget. We also treat safety models as first-class citizens in the batcher. Their slots do not starve under load, and their outputs have priority paths for downstream gating. A public performance methodology, think of the classic Little's Law derivations you find in queuing theory texts, reminds us that throughput, service time, and queue length are coupled. We respect the math. We will not trade pretty graphs for missed trains at the edge. Third, quantization. We quantify pain before we quantize weights. Our trials on lower precision variants show predictable behavior. Simple tasks degrade gracefully. Nuanced refusals and long context citations degrade quickly if we are careless, so we tier precision by task class. The router dispatches to a lower precision path for low risk, short responses, and stays high precision for anything that touches health, finance, legal, or public figure disputes. We document the deltas on a reliability sheet that shows error rates per class before and after quantization. If a class regresses beyond a threshold, it returns to full precision until we fix it. 3 vignettes keep this from turning into an abstract lecture. A design assistant that drafts product descriptions was burning tokens by re-explaining brand guidelines every time. We built a tiny tool. Fetch brand.guidelines version.id returns a short, paragraph-tagged snippet from a store. We cache that tool result for an hour keyed to version.id and safety tier. Unit cost dropped sharply, and the refusal rate stayed stable because the safety path still inspected the final composition. Users saw faster first drafts. The creative lead said the assistant felt snappier and less wordy, which is exactly what caching should feel like. A code review agent in a CI system ran into batch sickness. In quiet hours, big batches worked well. In busy hours, the tail blew up and engineers stared at spinning icons. We replaced a fixed batcher with a micro batcher that caps queue time, not batch size, and set a strict rule. Any moderation call in the batch gets first pass. Engineering suggestions are second pass. The result reads like common sense in retrospect. P95 stabilized during peak pushes, and the audit trail shows no increase in missed policy violations. The artifact that proves it sits in the CI run dashboard, end-to-end review times by hour, with the moderation tier always inside budget. A knowledge assistant for small municipalities was our crucible for quantization. When we tried lower precision everywhere, citations drifted. The assistant occasionally summarized without linking to the paragraph ID in the bylaw. We reversed course. The summarizer could run quantized, but the citation extractor and verifier stayed high precision with a strict cite or abstain rule. The civic clerk's feedback was blunt. We don't need flourishes, we need the clause number. After that change, throughput improved without the compliance scares. That's the pattern I trust. Keep high precision where refusal or citation accuracy carries risk. Use quantized inference to accelerate the harmless middle. Energy is not an abstract line in a spreadsheet. It is capacity at the wall and heat in the room. We map our footprints to real regions. Grid carbon intensity varies by interconnect. The tables are public and power system reports. I won't moralize about energy sources. I will operationalize. Schedule non-urgent batch jobs in lower intensity windows when possible, co-locate caches where latency and power mix are favorable, and keep production serving in facilities with documented redundancy. A well-known data center survey's PUE distributions tell the truth about variance. You don't need hero numbers to know that discipline beats myths. We will measure PUE in effective energy per safe completion, not PUE in isolation. That aligns engineering with product reality. Human impact sits in the billing line of a small language school that uses our writing assistant during evening classes. Last week, they saw cost volatility. A spike in long contexts and a drop in cache hits pushed their per session bill above plan. They didn't blame us. They asked for predictability so they could keep prices stable for students who pay by the hour. We responded by turning on context capping during spikes and offering a predictable lane with fixed latency and slightly stricter refusals. The school took the predictable lane and the refunds stopped. Reliability is dignity. Again, predictable cost is part of reliability. Claims meet documents. Claim, context length correlates with moderation compute spend and refusal instability. Document, our cost and safety dashboards show moderation milliseconds rising superlinearly with context above a threshold. Refusal variance climbs too. Implication, dynamic context, ceilings during spikes, with opt-in to slower audited lanes for power users. Claim, naive caching can replay unsafe answers. Document, incident tickets where cache keys ignored safety tier. You can read the postmortems and see the reproduced bug. Implication, include the moderation tier and router risk score in the cache key and expire aggressively on policy updates. A contrarian line for the week. Energy constraints can make our product better if they force us to simplify. We cut decorative tokens, reduce verbosity, and favor cited snippets over free-form essays. The record that checks me is user satisfaction by response length. After a rephrasing pass-removed filler, satisfaction held or improved in most domains. The implication is to make the concise cited style the default under constrained power windows, not an afterthought. 2 recommendations to land. For the infra team, implement cache keys that include safety tier, router risk bucket, and tool version with a 1-hour TTL and instant invalidation on policy change. Ship in 10 days and measure cache-induced incidents to 0 for a week before expanding. For the model platform team, deploy tiered precision routing by task class with a reliability sheet that lists pre- and post-quantization error rates and a rollback threshold. Pilot within 2 weeks on low-risk domains. Expand only after stability. Execution dominance here means winning each iteration under fixed energy and compute. We do that by cutting waste that users don't value, by guarding refusal consistency at all costs, and by routing precision to where risk lives. Bottom line, We will squeeze cost with caching, batching, and quantization that are safety aware, not safety blind. If trade-offs rise, we choose reliability and predictability over cosmetic speed. Pressure stays on, we keep tightening the loop with eyes on the wall power, not the hype. We close by knitting governance, distribution, and human impact into a disciplined playbook with near-term moves and one long-term guardrail. I'm signaling closure because the work now is integration, not new slogans, and the risk is simple. If governance drifts slower than distribution, the product will scale its own surprises. I switch the throughline to platform shifts. Each shift, PC to web, web to mobile, mobile to AI agents, rewards teams that align distribution mechanics with responsibility mechanics. The basic argument is that we must ship governance as part of the product surface, not as a separate document. Here is why. Users experience our choices through flows, defaults, and latency. If the enforcement lives only in PDFs and review boards, incentives at the edge will beat policy at the center. The route to closure is pragmatic. Bind capabilities to accountable usage, make refusals predictable and teachable, expose provenance by default, and build a support loop that answers in hours, not weeks. Mechanically, I focus on two systems: safeguards as product and distribution with audit. Safeguards as product means refusals, citations, and provenance are not modal pop-ups. They are first-class features with stable URLs, paragraph IDs, and short explanations users can reference and share. Distribution with audit means SDKs, plugins, and agent scaffolds carry signed policy manifests, versioned safety settings, and telemetry hooks the customer can inspect. If a partner extends the surface, we inherit their risk. If they degrade our refusal patterns, users will blame us. So we make the contract visible in software, not implied in emails. 3 product vignettes show the shape. A classroom assistant used by teachers needs an accountable way to explain why a prompt was refused. We added a why this was refused link that opens a compact page with the policy paragraph number, a 1-sentence rationale, and a short path for appeal. Latency matters, so the link is served from a cached, static manifest keyed to the policy version. Teachers printed the page and taped it near the whiteboard. Students learned the boundaries faster. Support tickets dropped. The lesson is boring and decisive. Predictability creates trust. Trust lowers load. A developer platform that exposes tool use had the opposite pressure. Partners wanted to relax moderation in their private domains and asked for silent mode refusals. We declined and shipped an annotated refusal mode instead. The model returns a compact refusal with a machine-readable object that includes the violated policy section, the router's risk tier, and the available alternative paths. We signed that object. Downstream apps can style the message, but they cannot remove the annotation without breaking the signature. The SDK exposes verification as a one-liner. Developers grumbled for a week, then built UI that explains limits in their own voice. The compliance audit trail writes itself. A local government portal adopted our knowledge assistant for public records. Their requirement was distribution with audit in the open. We exposed a show sources toggle that is on by default and pinned to the exact paragraph IDs from the documents they host. We added a small banner that shows the policy version and the last model update timestamp with links to a changelog. When a resident challenged an answer, the clerk clicked View Provenance, walked to the paragraph, and closed the loop in seconds. The portal's legitimacy rode on that speed. Human impact is the reason to do it this way. A community mediator who uses the assistant to prepare neutral summaries told us bluntly that what determines trust is not perfect accuracy. It's whether the tool confesses uncertainty with receipts and refuses with dignity. They cannot defend a black box in a tense room. They can defend a calm sentence that says, I can't do that, and points to a public paragraph. Reliability is dignity again, and governance is the scaffolding that makes reliability legible. Claims meet documents even as we close. Claim, governance that lives in code and manifests reduces resolution time for disputes. Document. The support dashboard shows a drop in average time to closure when annotated refusals are enabled. The audit log proves fewer back and forths. Implication. Treat the refusal object as an API primitive across all surfaces. Claim. Distribution without audit multiplies incident handling costs. Document. Partner integrations lacking signed policy manifests showed higher rates of untraceable refusals. The cost panel for those tenants spikes during public controversies. Implication, make signed manifests mandatory for new SDK versions and schedule migration windows with clear deadlines. I'll add a contrarian line that most miss. We over-index on model governance and under-index on onboarding governance. The fastest way to lower risk at scale is to shape the first 10 minutes of use. The record that checks me is retention and incident rate by onboarding cohort. Cohorts that saw a 2-minute walkthrough with examples of acceptable versus refused prompts produced fewer incidents and stuck around longer. The implication is to ship onboarding that teaches the boundary as a craft, not as an afterthought. Distribution now intersects with incentives. Free tiers attract exploration. Enterprise plans demand stability. We align both by offering lanes. A predictable lane with strict refusals, shorter contexts, and annotated provenance ships by default and is priced for stability. A power lane offers longer contexts and experimental tools with clear warnings, slower SLOs, and audit requirements. Each lane is honest about trade-offs. We publish the differences without marketing gloss. 2 near-term moves anchor the next week. For the product team, ship governance as surface across the top 3 workloads. Turn on annotated refusals, policy paragraph links, and signed refusal objects for all users, with a 1-week rollout and a simple status page that shows policy version and last model update. Success is measured by a reduction in unresolved support tickets and an increase in users who click to view policy text before retrying. For the partner team, require signed policy manifests in the next SDK release. Give partners 30 days to migrate and run weekly office hours to unblock them. Success is a clean migration graph and a flat incident rate during public spikes. The long-term guardrail is a responsible scaling plan that binds capability ramps to documented safety and energy budgets with pre-approved rollback paths. It is not a press release. It is an operating rule set with triggers. When eval coverage drops below threshold, when moderation milliseconds breach a per-tier cap, when energy consumption per safe completion crosses a regional ceiling, the plan shifts us to a conservative lane automatically. The triggers are boring, numeric, and checkable. The rollbacks are reversible. This is how we make speed safe, by committing in advance to what will slow us down and why. Synthesis is simple. The capability safety cost balance now permits fast, useful assistance inside tiered latency budgets when prompts stay within policy and contexts remain disciplined. It permits structured tools with citations and provenance at consumer scale. It forbids silent relaxation of refusals, fuzzy provenance, and any caching or quantization that destabilizes human-facing reliability. Uncertainty remains on the edges. Indirect harassment tactics will evolve. Long context failure modes will surprise us. Regional energy ceilings will compress headroom at inconvenient times. We're not anxious, we're ready. Execution dominance here means winning each iteration as constraints tighten, not pretending constraints are gone. Bottom line, governance must ship in the product, distribution must carry audit, and human dignity must be protected by predictable refusals and receipts. We already chose the lane. Useful, reliable, aligned with real-world constraints. Thank you for building through the noise. We keep shipping safely and keep listening.